coming up today, facing growing threats out of North Korea. President Park Geun-hye once again calls on Pyongyang to abandon its nuclear weapons and choose the right path for the sake of its own survival. Finally, over 700 people register to run in next month's general election. Those still hoping to run have until the end of the day to throw their hat into the ring. South Korea's gross national income per capita dropped last year for the first time since the height of the global financial crisis, as the local currency weakened sharply against the dollar. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Friday, the 25th of March. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We're going to start with South Korea's inaugural West Sea Defense Day. The day was established to remember and pay tribute to the thousands of South Koreans who sacrificed their lives to protect the nation on the Western Sea border with North Korea. In her speech at the ceremony in Daejeon this morning, President Park Geun-hye reaffirmed her will to reinforce defense readiness and warn North Korea that it must change or face the route to self-destruction. We connect with our correspondent Song Ji-sun at the presidential office for details. Ji-sun.
Good afternoon, Mark. Paying tribute to the fallen soldiers who died protecting the West Sea from North Korean provocations, President Park Geun-hye stressed that the South Korean government will stand strong against any threat from the North, and that the regime's reckless provocations will only lead to self-destruction. The president said she will gather wisdom from world leaders to resolve North Korea's nuclear issues and nuclear terror threats at the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington next week.
국제사회가 북한의 핵 개발과 도발을 더 이상 용납할 수 없다는 단호한 의지를 결집하고 있는 지금이 북한 정권을 변화시킬 수 있는 기회입니다. 여기서 우리가 또다시 물러선다면 북한의 핵 능력 고도화로 한반도에 돌이킬 수 없는 재앙이 닥치고 경제는 마비될 것입니다. 정부는
She also added that North Korea is more isolated than ever, with comprehensive international sanctions imposed after its recent nuclear test and the missile launch, and the chance of it carrying out an additional provocation is higher than ever. Calling on the military to be on full alert so that the North cannot even dream of further provocations, the president called for national unity, saying security cannot be guaranteed if South Koreans are divided from the inside.
국가 안보를 지키는 길에는 이념도 정파도 있을 수 없습니다. 대한민국을 지키는 가장 큰 힘은 국민의 하나된 마음과 애국심에서 나옵니다. 우리나라가 오늘의 안보 위기를 슬기롭게 극복하고 한반도 평화통일 시대를 열어갈 수 있도록 국민 여러분께서 하나로 힘을 모아주시기 바랍니다.
She then asked the public to trust the government and the military against Pyongyang's continued attempts to divide the nation into cyberspace as well. Back to you.
Thank you, Ji-sun, for that report. Now, beginning this year, every fourth Friday of March will be designated as West Sea Defense Day. For more on the events leading up to this tribute, Kwon Jang-ho reports.
On the evening of the fourth Friday of March in 2010, a North Korean submarine fired a torpedo at the Cheonan warship off the west coast of the peninsula in the West Sea. The attack came without warning or reason, killing 46 of the 104 men on board. After several investigations by South Korean and international authorities, it was determined that the sinking had been caused by a North Korean torpedo.
We can confirm that the recovered torpedo fragments were made in North Korea.
North Korea denied responsibility, but 8 months later fired around 170 artillery shells and rockets at Yeonpyeong Island, killing 2 soldiers and 2 civilians. Yeonpyeong was also the location of another flashpoint in 2002. North Korean ships crossed the maritime border between the two Koreas near the island. The South Korean Navy warned the North Korean ships to turn back, but they began firing instead. 6 Korean soldiers were killed and over a dozen North Korean men also died. Incidents like these have led to the designation of the West Sea Defense Day in South Korea. It is a day to commemorate the lives lost to North Korean aggression and reinforces Seoul's commitment to defending the area. Recent provocations by the North have highlighted the dangers that the peninsula still faces. But this day is for celebrating the bravery of the lost soldiers and the sacrifices they made for their country. Kwon Jang-ho, Arirang News.
North Korea has once again threatened to destroy South Korean government organizations and forcefully reunify the two Koreas. The latest threats came from North Korea's Korean Central News Agency on Friday as Kim Jong-un supervised the regime's largest long-range artillery exercises to date. Kim has reportedly ordered his military to be ready for combat so it can ruthlessly carry out an attack at any moment. Pyongyang did not reveal when the drills were conducted. However, the South Korean military says the North carried out the exercises on Thursday near the northeastern city of Wonsan. The North is believed to have conducted the exercise in protest of the ongoing annual South Korea-US joint military drills. Now, on the first day of the two-day candidate registration period for next month's general election, a total of 701 hopefuls threw their hat into the ring. With one full day of registration still to go, this already brings the competition ratio to 2.8 candidates for each National Assembly seat up for grabs. The number is up around 12% compared to the first day of registration for the 2012 general election. Pundits say the increase is a result of the increased number of electoral districts and the splitting of the Liberal opposition bloc. The ruling Multiparty accounted for the most registrations at 210, followed by the main opposition Minju Party of Korea with 190. The splinter opposition People's Party has registered 109 candidates. The rest are minor parties and independents. By gender, the candidates are predominantly male, accounting for 629 of the 701. By age, the biggest group are men and women in their 50s. Official campaigning will kick off on March 31st and run through April 12th, a day before the April 13th vote. So, as we just heard, the official two-day candidate registration period for next month's general election will come to a close on Friday evening. And for the first time in 20 years, Koreans heading to the polls will have 3 major parties to vote for instead of the usual 2. Shin Se-min reports.
3 negotiating political parties will be on the ballot paper when Koreans enter polling stations on April 13th. It'll mark the first time since the mid-1990s that more than 2 will be in the running. They are the ruling Multiparty, which holds a majority of 146 seats in the 300-seat National Assembly, the main opposition Minju Party of Korea, with 102, and the minor opposition People's Party, which was recently bestowed the status of a negotiating bloc, with 21 seats. Korea saw its last multi-party election in 1996, when 4 parties went head-to-head. That's also when the opposition blocs stopped the then-ruling New Korea Party, led by former late President Kim Il-sung, from securing a majority. But this year's race isn't expected to have a similar outcome.
The infighting within the parties during the candidate nomination process, especially within the Saenuri Party and the Minju Party of Korea, caused a rift between supporters of the individual parties, but I don't expect voters to switch allegiances.
The nomination feud in the ruling party revolved around lawmakers loyal to President Park Geun-hye and those not in her faction, like Yoo Sung-min, who left the party on Wednesday to run as an independent. The turmoil was not limited to the ruling party, though. The infighting between the faction loyal to the late President Roh Moo-hyun and those not allied with Roh put a strain on the main opposition Minju Party. The party is being run by interim leader Kim Jong-in, who stepped up after pro-Roh member Moon Jae-in resigned as chairman under pressure from lawmakers unhappy with his leadership. The minor opposition People's Party lost a key member of its leadership, Election Committee Chair Kim Han-gil, after a conflict with party founder and co-chair An Chol-soo about whether to embrace the Minju Party's proposal to join forces to win the election. Experts say this year's election should be one to watch as a number of factors like the country's delayed electoral map and the hotly contested nomination process have spiced things up. One thing for sure, though, the results will be a good indicator of how the party's presidential candidates will do in the big one next year. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Now, creating quality jobs is Korea's most pressing economic goal. This is according to Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol, who says the reason why society pays such keen attention to jobs data is because job security is closely related to the welfare of households and the people. Last month, the youth unemployment rate in Korea hit an all-time high of 12.5%. He said that, although it's true that it's hard to find a job right now, the rise was due in part to seasonal factors such as the usual mass exodus during the Lunar New Year holiday and many young people taking the state civil servant exam. The top central banker also stressed the need to quickly prepare for rapid technological developments, especially in the education system. He noted that innovation in the system will help people prepare for future jobs and adapt to the changing environment. Staying with economic news, and Korea's gross national income per capita dropped last year for the first time in 6 years. The central bank cites the weakening local currency trend as the major reason for the decline, as it was driven down by the dollar-converted value of income. Ao Hung-jie has the details.
The long targeted goal of gross national income per capita topping the $30,000 mark will have to remain as Korea's goal for another year. The Bank of Korea says the income per person last year stood at $27,340, down more than 2.5% from a year ago. It's the first decline since the country was hit hard by the global financial crisis in 2009. The central bank attributes the drop to the weakening Korean won against the greenback that dragged down the dollar-converted value of the national income. The won on average weakened over 7% against the dollar last year from the previous year. In fact, the gross national income per capita rose more than 4% in terms of local currency. Personal gross disposable income, which gauges the amount of money a person can spend on whatever they want, also dropped 2.5% in dollar terms, but the amount went up nearly 5% if calculated in local currency. But it looks hard for Korea to completely wash off concerns of sluggish growth momentum, with the economy expanding 2.6% last year. That marks a slowdown from 3.3% growth posted in 2014. And facing exports plunging for the 14th straight month now, forecasts are showing that Korea will fail to grow in the 3% range again this year. With that, analysts are expecting the central bank to slash its growth outlook for this year that currently stands at 3% when it releases its new figures next month. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
US President Barack Obama and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping will meet for summit talks in Washington next week. The White House says the two leaders will meet on March 31st to discuss cooperation on a range of issues and address areas of disagreement constructively. Implementation of the new UN sanctions on North Korea for its nuclear weapons development is expected to be one of the main items on the agenda. According to China's Vice Foreign Minister, President Xi will reiterate China's stance that talks on denuclearization must go hand in hand with the UN sanctions to make progress towards peace on the Korean peninsula. The two leaders are also expected to discuss the increased military activities in the South China Sea and cybersecurity issues. Their meeting will be held ahead of the 4th Nuclear Security Summit, which takes place every 2 years and is aimed at preventing nuclear terrorism around the world. On the heels of the deadly terror attacks in Brussels, EU members have pledged to rapidly move to share key information to effectively combat terrorism. Despite a suspect still being on the run, Belgium has lowered its security alert down a notch from the highest level. Park Jong-hong with the details.
The urgent need for closer cooperation on security is in the spotlight following the attacks in Brussels. The European Union's Justice and Home Affairs Council on Thursday urged for the rapid agreement on plans to share strategic intelligence data. This agreement had been stalled partly due to some EU members being lukewarm about full sharing of information like flight passenger data. But at emergency talks in an EU building near the metro station which was bombed, the ministers agreed that data sharing is crucial to fighting terrorism.
Emphasizes that we will exchange information even swifter than we already do, that we will now very soon need to implement the passenger name records. We will need to see a swift completion of legislation on combating terrorism.
The ongoing probe into the attacks in Brussels has revealed that the suicide bombers who blew themselves up were reportedly originally considering an attack on a nuclear site in Belgium, but that recent terror arrests may have deterred them from doing so. The Belgium-based DH newspaper reports that two of the bombers, brothers Khalid and Ibrahim Bakroui, had covertly filmed the home of an unidentified senior official in the nuclear industry. A police source said the men's actions prompted them to ratchet up security around nuclear plants. However, experts say the high security areas around such facilities would have probably thwarted any attack by the militants. Meanwhile, Belgium has lowered the level of heightened security. The Belgian Crisis Center has confirmed that the security alert level is now down to 3 from 4, which is the highest level. This comes just 2 days after the suicide bomb attacks at an airport in Brussels and a metro station in the city left 31 people dead and 270 injured. Park Jong-hong, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.